Big Five accounting firm KPMG says that the crypto market is maturing even as Bitcoin price and crypto prices across the board continue to drop. Now, if you had told me that KPMG or any Big Five accounting firm would even be talking about crypto a few years ago, I would have probably told you that you're nuts. So it's interesting that we are even on their radar, but the metrics that you're using to determine the maturity of the crypto market, in my mind, are a bit fishy. But we'll talk about that a bit more in a few minutes. I have an amazing guest today. We have Ajit Tripathi, also known as Chain Yoda, more popularly known as Chain Yoda, which is a Twitter name that I love. Very cool. And we're going to be talking everything DeFi, NFT, news, and of course, markets. You guys don't want to miss this one. Let us go.
Let's go.
What is up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel and aggressively headbutt the like button. But do not sue me if you injure any of the parts of your face by doing that, because it was a sarcastic suggestion and people on the internet do not ever understand sarcasm. Hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Who's here? We got everybody. We got you. You're all here. The gang's all here, and it's always nice to see familiar faces in the audience. Now, guys, there's actually quite a bit of news today, both in macro and in crypto markets. As you saw with Dave Weisberger yesterday, I allowed my guests the opportunity to review the news with me, which was nice to have a second perspective, and something that we're going to do more often, especially when we have wise, intelligent, and amazing guests like we do today. Of course, as I mentioned before, I'm going to go ahead and bring him on right now. I've got Ajit. How are you, man?
Very well, Scott. It's great to see you again. I haven't had a chance to look at the doc you sent me, but I'm on Twitter 24/7. So hopefully I know what you're going to ask about.
Well, listen, in my approach towards everything is just wing it and YOLO, especially anytime I go on someone else's show. So listen, like you said, we do this 24/7, right? I mean, I write a newsletter, I do a show. I should be able to answer any question that someone fires at me regarding crypto.
Exactly.
But can you give like the very, very quick background as to your involvement in the crypto space, because you're doing a lot?
Yeah, I've been around 8 years in this space, but in the early days, I was a blockchain guy and I wasn't very interested in cryptocurrency. So I did a bunch of stuff around, I went to DevCon 1, shook hands with Vitalik, Joe, all the guys from the Ethereum Foundation. But I wasn't very interested in cryptocurrency at all. So I did a bunch of stuff around blockchains, enterprise blockchains. And then I ended up at Consensus, where I, got more involved with public blockchains. But my crypto involvement really started with, after I left Consensus in 2019 and got involved with a bunch of crypto startups. Then I went to work for Binance, then Aave. And I think all the work I had done around evangelizing Ethereum back in the day came in very handy. And, so I've done a lot since in the crypto space as an angel investor, as a DeFi product person, as an evangelist, as an advisor to a few, very high-profile teams like Polygon more recently. And it's just been a phenomenal ride. I've never had so much fun in my life as I've had in the crypto business. There's just so much innovation. It's just amazing.
Right, but obviously now we're sort of in the depths of the bear market, and I think sentiment has turned somewhat sour across the board. Your PFP, your profile picture on Twitter, of course, is a punk, which would lead me to believe that you are a passionate NFT collector. And I'm not sure if you saw this first piece of news, but Bowie Ethereum NFTs are being launched. I leave it to the crypto community to push back and be angry about something that's completely for charity and supported by some of the best artists like Fuocious. So why do you think we still see so much anger, aggression, and pushback towards NFTs, even when it's something that's completely charitable?
I think it's perfectly fine. I would rather be in a position where people react angrily than in a position where people just ignore NFTs. So love us or hate us, but please don't ignore us. So at least we are exciting some interest on either side. I think there are a few, misunderstandings out there. One is that NFTs are not good for the environment. Some people believe that, but that's not true. With blockchains like Polygon, and after Ethereum moves to proof of stake, I think we will see that the environmental impact is very low. The second thing is some people, especially in the artistic world, are against commercialization of things. So, for example, the CryptoPunk community is very organic and very degen and revolutionary and not particularly friendly to commercialization. So NFTs kind of excite some vibes in that part of the artist and fan crowd that commercialization is not such a great idea. And then so it's perfectly fine, I think, as long as we are getting. But at the same time, I think initially everybody tends to resist innovation or new things, and they're uncomfortable for a lot of people. We fear a lot of things. There was a time when people used to fear automobiles, then they used to fear Bitcoin, they used to fear email once upon a time. So I'm old enough to remember when email was hated. So I think it's perfectly fine. But at least we're getting the right attention from the world, and eventually they will come around to it. Let's get more of this out there.
When I showed up my freshman year of college at the University of Pennsylvania, I walked into orientation the first day and they said, "What do you want your email address to be?" And I said, "What the hell is an email address?" so I've been around probably as long, the 14.4 modems in the library dialing up to download one photo for 3 days. So yeah, I agree with that general sentiment. You kind of talked about obviously the environmental FUD and the move of Ethereum to proof of stake, which obviously brings us to the next topic. And everybody has an opinion on the merge, what's going to happen. I mean, we're basically a week away, but there's some big questions as to the infrastructure that's been used to mine Ethereum in the past and what's going to happen, right? We have how Ethereum miners plan to pivot after the merge. I mean, Hut 8, one of the biggest miners in Canada and the world, I mean, they've gone on to say, hey, we're going to start focusing on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we're not even going to mine as much anymore. I mean, this is a pretty big shift for people who have been making millions and billions mining Ethereum.
Yeah, it's and I think it's going to be uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, Ethereum exists for its users, right? So from the beginning, the idea has been to not necessarily serve the intermediaries, but to disintermediate financial networks, right? So I think for that reason, minor extractable value or maximum extractable value has been a big topic. So miners had a very profitable time with Ethereum, but at the end of the day, Ethereum, Vitalik has been talking about proof of stake right from the day Ethereum was launched. I remember it from 2015-ish, and so this has been coming. Miners had a lot of time to prepare for it. They can switch to Ethereum Classic if they want. They can continue to mine a proof of stake fork. They have many choices, but at the end of the day, Ethereum has to do what's right for the planet and what's right for users and developers. So this has to happen, right? And sorry to the miners, but
yeah, I mean, but to your point there, right? And this comes on. I had a long conversation about this on the show yesterday because there's obviously, as a result, gaming chips are decreasing in value dramatically. There's sort of this flood into the market, but more importantly, it sort of is putting in question for a lot of people, myself absolutely not included, as anyone knows here, about the future of proof of work in general. Right, the future of proof of work in general. What's going to happen? One of my friends, Dan Held, he was recently interviewed, and he said Ethereum merge will add pressure to Bitcoin's energy consumption. And there was an article on CoinDesk yesterday that said that the merge would effectively, over time, be the end of Bitcoin and proof of work, not because it's not superior, but because regulators would basically say, look, uneducated regulators, right? And that's what Dan's saying here as well. Dan's a Bitcoiner, right? Uneducated regulators would say, hey, look, this whole blockchain, Ethereum, was proof of work. It went to proof of stake. They changed the planet. We're regulating away proof of work and Bitcoin. Do you think that that's a threat? I mean, we all know that the argument's nonsense, but do you think that's a threat?
I think we have to put our money where the mouth is, right? So Bitcoiners have been, Melker, Dan Held, a bunch of others have been saying on Twitter that Bitcoin is a battery. But that's a narrative. The reality is Bitcoin's energy consumption, especially in the post-Ukraine war environment, is not sustainable, right? So I think we have to just invest more in things we've been talking about, like mining Bitcoin with volcanic geothermal energy, mining with solar energy. I moved to Dubai like 2 weeks ago permanently, and there is so much solar energy. We just need to switch to greener sources. But proof of work has a place, right? Proof of work is still, if you ask me, and I'm much more heavily long on Ethereum, but proof of work is proven. It's secure, right? How secure, what the security properties are. Proof of stake is relatively new, and it's secure enough, but is it really as secure as proof of work? Probably not. So I think we just Bitcoin as it has a huge community. It has a great Wall Street and industrial backing. We just need to really stop the narrative stuff and get to work and actually invest in clean sources of energy for proof of work.
Yeah, I mean, we've reviewed it here a million times. It's not even worth digging into, but the whole energy argument is somewhat nonsensical when you actually dig into where that energy comes from, right? People focus on the amount of electricity used, which is completely unimportant. It's important where that electricity comes from, right? Electric cars are electric. Yeah, they use electricity. It matters where the electricity comes from.
So, Scott, if you're asking for my personal views, right, I'm going to disagree with you. And I'll say, look, in the UK, for example, we just left the UK. I was there for 12 years. The energy bills have gone crazy, right? So we're talking about £3,000 a month, and for a lot of families, that's just not affordable. Texas is going through a bit of a problem with the grid, so is California. So I think when you think about this like a non-Bitcoin economist, like a traditional economist, then the opportunity cost of that electricity is actually very high. Whatever energy I'm using for mining Bitcoin, I could potentially use for something else, right? So personally, I think Bitcoin needs clean sources of energy. And that will address the concern around environmental concerns, because public perception is also a big deal, right? So
yeah, I was being very specific to Bitcoin miners that are using wasted electricity that's not being used for those other things, right? I mean, if you can put a Bitcoin miner, right, you could take a Bitcoin mining facility and put it at the source of electricity where it's being wasted and use those flares, which is not being used to help people in the UK with their bills. So I agree with the sentiment of what you're saying.
That was especially true in China with hydroelectricity, right? A lot of energy was quite clean, but that's not the case anymore. Now Texas isn't clean hydroelectricity. Texas is fossil fuel electricity, right? So I think we have to be aware of. So it's. I think Bitcoiners would do well to be just more sensitive to public perception and respond to it and listen to it, as opposed to arguing or fighting with it. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, banging your head against the wall. And this is the sort of was the theme of the theme of the stream today was crypto markets are maturing. This is from KPMG, one of the big 5 accounting firms, as I mentioned. But interestingly, and I don't disagree with this, we see massive venture capital investment. You're an angel investor yourself. We know that there's tons of money still flowing in the crypto space. But basically, their argument was that even though prices are falling, we're still seeing a lot of investment into the space, although far less than 2021, but beating 2020 numbers. And therefore, the markets have matured. I can't really get there on their argument. I don't see how.
I don't think the markets have matured. I don't think the markets have matured. I think if anything, the equity markets have unmatured, right? So we see Bed Bath and Beyond, AMC, Ape, and all these crazy meme stocks actually pumping. So I think crypto markets haven't quite matured yet, because we haven't really figured out regulatory clarity. There are still insufficient controls on things like insider trading, or we're still seeing some pretty awkward incidents in centralized finance. Celsius was only 3 months ago. Voyager is selling their assets next week. So I don't know where KPMG got this idea from that markets have matured. But I think it's a nice aspiration, right? So we definitely want the markets to mature a bit more, and maybe they have matured compared to 2018 when I was on, I think, your show, and I said, crypto is a rebellious teenager that's starting to grow up. But I think market microstructure is pretty, not very grown up, right? And NFT markets, for example, are completely insider ridden and pretty crazy, if you ask me. And I'm an NFT collector too. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done. While the question is, can we do that while supporting and encouraging innovation, right, and not really clamping down on a good thing? So markets need to mature, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I literally laughed when I said the title. If the only metric is more money coming in, there is like they even showed that it's
When did
halfway
that
through
do
the
anything
year.
for the maturity of markets? That's right.
Yeah, when you look at Luna, Three Arrows Capital,
Yeah,
Celsius, Voyager, like you said, the amount of wormhole attacks, scams, exploits, it's very hard. And as you said, you can even make the argument that global markets or legacy markets, the stock market,
legacy markets
is
are becoming
more
mature.
immature.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I would say that
less
all
mature
markets are
potentially,
becoming.
right? You've got all
Right.
these meme stock and meme bonds
Yeah.
going
I
around.
guess it
So
depends
I
on
don't
your
know.
I guess it depends on your level of comparison. Sure, it's more mature than 2014 when it was barely a market, or even
Yeah,
2018
exactly.
when but yeah, it's unfair. You kind of just
Yeah.
touched on this. So obviously my you won't know this, but my followers always like the updates on Voyager because I'm one of their largest creditors. But as you said, bankrupt Voyager Digital to hold asset auction on September 13th. For those getting really excited, we won't find out the results of that auction until September 29th. But it is interesting that they sort of extended this because there were a lot of willing or interested suitors who wanted a little more time to do due diligence. But I don't know how closely you've been following it. Honestly, even
Yeah.
though I'm deeply involved, I don't follow it closely because I don't like being miserable and angry person.
Yeah, so I'm not deeply involved, but I've been following it closely. I have to avoid commenting on the specifics. But I would say that distressed asset investing in crypto is a really cool thing. It's happening in token markets too, where DeFi tokens are artificially depressed. And then you have in actually CeFi markets as well, where you have Voyager, Celsius, and so on as distressed assets. I think Sam started the trend. He kind of started looking into BlockFi and then making some very strong offers or like strongly negotiated offers to a bunch of firms. So I think a lot of investors are looking at this. But then because of the lack of quality auditing, right? So even when the books are really audited by traditional auditors, it's hard to really value these types of toxic assets. With Voyager, I think if there are sophisticated private equity investors who have access to the right materials and books, which I would be very surprised about, then there is going to be potentially some very interesting opportunity to buy assets on fire sale prices. But the only way you get any value out of these assets is if you are actively involved in turning them around, right? So this is going to require turnaround artists and firms like Alvarez and Marcel to get involved, and really get some value out of the assets. That's a really hard thing to do in crypto, but where there is difficulty, there is opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing to do, especially when sentiment is so in the dumps around the entire
But
market.
that's where the opportunity
and then
is,
of
right?
course, right, it is. But then for buying up the assets, but for a customer who wants to get made whole, and for an investor who wants Voyager to continue as the exact same business, that seems a little bit of a stretch. But obviously, listen,
it is. But if you,
high hopes, low expectations.
If I was a PE firm, I would look for experts and operators to come in and fix this.
Yeah, I think that there's a viable chance. It's hard still, even 2 months into it, to predict. If this is pennies on the dollar, is it 60 cents on the dollar, is it 80 cents, or do people eventually get made whole and this becomes a functional business? I think that's less likely. I don't have it pulled up here, but Vald, who also had an update, as you guys likely know, they had a 60-day period with Nexo to do due diligence that basically disallowed any other suitors to even look at the company. And now they're extending that 30 days to do more due diligence. So I would say that with Vald, we don't have many answers, but they have a much smaller gap to fill than a lot of the other lenders. So I think
that's right. In fact, I was speculating, in my head that maybe CZ will come in and pick one of these up. But, CZ is one of the smartest people when it comes to making money in this industry. And if he's not picking these up, then I think there is something there that people don't know yet.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, Sam made his play on BlockFi, sort of, as you mentioned, when I think a lot of people thought it would be on Voyager. And then the offer that he made to Voyager in July kind of pissed everyone off because it was just for liquidity and a liquidation of your assets when they're trying to do a buyout and not a liquidation. So I think that he sort of made his position clear and chose his horse, not the one that I'm involved in, unfortunately. But I am actually surprised that we haven't heard any bubblings of CZ, but perhaps that's because
there is a bit of an industry rumor, but CZ hasn't made a move, so
I think it just may be because Binance is working so hard to get on the good side of regulators all over the world, and this could be one of, and this just could be, even if it's
going right. Why would you take a risk for $100 million?
Good financial move, but why even put yourself in the crosshairs of an industry
and all the legal lawsuits and all that might come after you?
That's exactly what I think. Now we're moving on to some macro here, which is really interesting. We've been talking about Russia. I mean, has become like the China of crypto. Like every day you're banned, you're unbanned. We're using it. We hate it. It's the best. It's the worst. Right. I mean, we've seen even Putin himself have varying opinions on it. But now they're saying that they're exploring stablecoin settlements with friendly nations. They have not said who those friendly nations are, by the way. But yeah, I mean, they're literally looking now to use stable coins for cross-border settlements. Which, I mean, listen, it's one of those interesting things. This is the purpose of crypto in a lot of people's minds. Just they'd rather it not be Russia that's doing it. They'd rather it be the United States and El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, during the recent war, there was a lot of talk of swift sanctioning Russia and even Russian central bank. What that means is, Russian banks and the entire Russian financial system can get easily cut off because the NATO countries have such influence on the pipes that actually run the cross-border settlement, SWIFT specifically. So I think it's time for, I'm not surprised. The GCC countries have been for a while looking at Ripple and looking at settlement using stable coins and cross-border CBDC architectures. There's a very active project in the GCC countries around that. So I think there are a lot of geopolitical centers that are saying, look, what do we do? How do we hedge the risk of, America or NATO countries arbitrarily shutting us off of our payment trails, not just globally, but also within the regions. So I think it kind of makes sense for Russia. But then if they use like mainstream public blockchains, then that will create a lot of problems for the rest of us, right? There was another news saying ISIS is minting NFTs and then Iran is doing something else. Can we just like have 2 or 3 quiet months?
It's like if you liked Tornado Cash sanctions, wait till you see what they got for you if Putin starts using the Ethereum blockchain for cross-border settlements.
We don't need this type of attention right now. So if Putin wants to build his own fork of Tron or something on the side,
he'll use JP Morgan coin.
Do that.
He can use XRP.
His own Putin coin.
He can use XRP. It's very fast.
As long as he leaves out, this might be controversial in the crypto community because all of this is supposed to be global and cross-border, but the reality is, we could use some quiet time with AML regulators right now, especially after Tornado.
Yeah, and to be frank, I don't think we're going to ever get that quiet time, right? Because this is one of those things. It's just one of those things. Like all the things that we believe crypto is good for, it's an agnostic technology, right? You can't be angry at who uses it for those purposes. So, and what you end up getting is that the Russias and the North Koreas adopting it first.
That's right. Unfortunately, we haven't built the technology stack in a way that, it's completely uncensorable. There has been a lot of debate about Ethereum and Ethereum after proof of stake and whether Coinbase can start excluding or blocking transactions and so on. The hard technical reality is that, apart from potentially Monero and, not even Zcash, right? There are very, very few blockchains that are hardly any blockchains that are truly censorship resistant. Bitcoin is probably more censorship resistant than Ethereum because of the way it's, the mining networks work.
For sure.
But we need better tech. So I think the good news is that developers are now focusing less on what to do with the token and more to do with, how to make the networks more censorship resistant by design, where the network simply cannot comply, right? Because if you can comply, you're going to be asked to comply. So we have to design for credible neutrality, which means you simply cannot comply. It's simply impossible technologically to comply with arbitrary whims of nation states. So I think that's where we got to go. But the tech isn't there, so that's going to be the next big move in this space.
I love this quote from Alberto in the community here. As they say, buy Bitcoin or your enemies will. and then we have huge Jordan here saying, I wouldn't wish my average price even on my enemies, which is very funny. Very funny. So listen, I know you got to go in a minute. We're going to do one more quick story here that also is involved with the stable coins. That is, Binance conversions will lead to more USDC flowing into the exchange. Circle CEO. I'm sure you saw the story yesterday. We talked about it here that Binance is effectively cutting off USDC, TUSD, and Paxos coin, right? To consolidate into BUSD. Somehow Jeremy Allaire, who I love, thinks that that's good for USDC to be cut off from 50% of
you don't take on CZ, right? If you're in the business of issuing USDC, what are you going to say? I mean, you're going to go out, you're going to criticize CZ in public. That's not done, right? So I think this is for the users, this is convenient because, you don't want to deal with 10 different stable coins. It's much easier to have liquid pairs, and especially for derivatives traders, this is a really convenient move. But it's not good for USDC, and historically USDC has been very close to Coinbase, and Coinbase and Binance are the staunchest competitors in our space, right? Coinbase has been criticizing Binance for a long time for being less regulated and so on and so forth. And now, but what this does, you see, unlike Tether, right? Tether, there's a lot of FUD around Tether, but BUSD is very strong collateral. So I think what happens, and USDC has dominated DeFi, but now if BUSD has the most brand recall and the users see, and Binance is the biggest exchange in the world, and users see BUSD pairs in day out, they're going to use more BUSD and less USDC. So this is not good for USDC. Let me just put it out there very bluntly. I think we're going to see more BUSD in DeFi and across the board. So, but what is Mr. Allaire going to do? Is he going to criticize CZ in public? Now, in a different industry, this might have been an antitrust case because, it's Binance's exchange, it's Binance's stablecoin. You're actually kicking out other stablecoins instead of, free competition and so on and so forth. But this is crypto. So,
yeah,
and it's
those trading pairs were not even that popular. USDC and USDT trading pairs dominate. I think the point he's attempting to make here is that you go into Binance with your USDC, it's converted to BUSD, but then of course nobody's sending BUSD back out to get liquid, so that they'll still
liquidity over a period of time. Exactly.
Yeah, so he's saying that they'll still basically withdraw into USDC, which will help with liquidity. But I think that this is definitely one of those wishful thinking.
As users, we know it doesn't work exactly like that.
Listen, man, I know you got to go. You have any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Anything that's on your mind before I let you get out of here?
Next week is the Ethereum merge, right? I think Ethereum merge is the most hyped event in crypto after the Bitcoin halvening. I think it's a little bit oversold, right? I think oversold as in I think people have hyped it a little bit too much because the merge, even though it's a huge event and it really frees up Ethereum resources for scaling, it doesn't actually do anything for the users next week. I think, but there is a lot of hype, and the token. Ethereum token holders have been really excited about it, but I think so in the long term, I think in the 3-year time frame, this is really bullish for Ethereum. I'm very, very long Ethereum, but I would be surprised if it does a lot for the price of Ethereum in the next 6 months, right? Because it doesn't do anything for the users. So, but 3 years, absolutely. I
liken it to the halving.
I'm actually concerned that there is a little bit too much hype, but at the same time, as a technologist, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I always compare it sort of to the halving, right? The halving happens and we all celebrate, and then you wait 6 months for price to be affected because that's when supply and demand dynamics actually kick in.
Yeah, but in the meantime, the people will hype.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're having a rave and nothing's happening, right? So everybody, please follow Ajit on at Chain Yoda on Twitter, one of my favorite names. And thank you, man. You're welcome back anytime. Love discussing all this news with you. Thank you for all of your insight.
Thank you so much.
A lot of
Scott, it's been a pleasure, and all the best for 2023.
Thanks, man. See you soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, everybody go follow Chain Yoda on Twitter. I love having smart people to discuss things with because then I don't have to come up with wise things to say where I have none. And that's my job as a YouTuber, is to pretend that I'm smart, right? That's our job description. Anyways, moving on, we have a couple more stories here, and largely I'm just gonna discuss the charts as well, which we'll take a look at in a second. But here we have the Fed wants you to lose money in stocks and probably crypto too. That is an aggressive headline. For those who don't know, monetary policy works through financial conditions, including equities and consequently crypto, which has been highly correlated with the equity market. I'll save you the time reading this. Jerome Powell wants you to have fun staying poor. That's the gist of this. But why? What are they talking about here? The idea that we obviously all know is that if the economy is quote unquote strong, but we have high inflation, then we have Fed tightening cycles and a hawkish Fed aggressively looking to fix inflation. And that has to happen at the expense of something. And that's usually the price of assets. They're basically saying for a very brief time, very brief, hey, you rich people were a bit overzealous. You bought up everything. We're going to have to give you a reason to rethink that by putting some pressure on the stock market. And unemployment is still relatively low, which gives them sort of the green light. If unemployment numbers start to rise, maybe they will let off the gas. But the idea here is that they purposely want to push stock prices down, which is true, to fix inflation. And now crypto is basically extremely highly, aggressively, horribly correlated to the stock market, right? Why? I don't know, because we were all like, yay, institutions, hooray, Blackstone. Like, not me. I was like, I don't think Blackstone fits with the ethos of crypto. But when you get these big institutions and Wall Street involved in your asset, they're going to trade it just like everything else. And considering they view it as the riskiest of all the assets, that's the thing they're going to dump the most aggressively when things get ugly. And we're seeing a little bit of that right now in the market, of course. Bitcoin dips below 19K, hitting lowest point in 2 months. Coincidentally, mentally, it would seem that crypto Twitter is also hitting its lowest point in 2 months. Not maybe a coincidence. Price fell days, 18,680 on Tuesday, a point not seen since last June. Let's take a look at the chart really quickly, because that's not the whole story. Since last June is kind of relevant. Here we are, 18,857. First of all, this is the weekly chart, right? We're starting to see the 200 MA start to roll over. Not ideal at all, although it is still pointing up, has not turned down. But when we got rejected there at that 200 MA and made that lower high, that was a really good sign that 25K was the local top. There was very little to celebrate once this broke here at 23. As you can see, we have a series of lower highs and lower lows. This one is not confirmed. The lower high is not confirmed until we see another lower low, which we may or may not see. But 17,500, not that far away at this point to see that lower low. The good news is if we make a lower low, even if it's just one of these, right? I think a lot of people, listen, there's people who are looking for this move down to 14,000. That's the highs from July of 2019 when we had that major sort of bounce. But if you're looking for, a lot of people are looking for one of these, kind of sweep it, maybe get a wick down there and go above if it doesn't go down. At that point, you will have confirmed this lower high. There is a silver lining to that. And the silver lining to confirming that lower high at that point is that now to break bearish market structure, you only have to break 25,212 rather than 32,375, which was the last lower high in that series. Once you break the series of lower highs and lower lows, you break the bearish market structure and can get a bullish market structure. So at this point, if you're looking for that lower low and we make it, then now the focus becomes on 25,000 rather than 32,000, lowering the bar a bit, which is not such a bad thing. Not such a bad thing. As I pointed out there, I've been using the Ichimoku cloud again for fun. Nothing but bullish here. Even a bearish TK cross, that's the shorter moving average, or the Tenkin moving below the Kijun, which is the longer one. And that was a pretty good predictor that we were about to see that drop. But if you guys like good news, let's take a look at the weekly. There's question marks here because it ain't confirmed. Oh, man, it erased my lines. Let's look at the daily then first. First of all, we have a potential daily bullish divergence forming right now with oversold RSI. If we have this or even a more aggressive elbow up, I would consider it confirmed and say that we are bottoming very likely right now. Although you know this for a fact. We often see it kind of do one of these. Price, let me go down, right? And form bigger divs. So maybe, even if it confirmed, quote unquote, we see like a slighter drop in price. It kind of comes down here and goes up, something like that. Maybe that's how we get that sweep. But these are starting to show potential bottoming signals here with RSI and these potential divergences. And something that we very rarely see, I would actually argue have never seen. Because let's get rid of all these question marks. My chart looks all jacked up. Potentially, don't go doing anything stupid. Nothing's happened. But potentially we have bullish divergence here on the weekly chart with RSI, the most oversold it has literally ever been on the weekly chart. Hitting 25 on RSI was the lowest it had ever been, except for when, of course, was originally being charted. Right? We had bearish divergences there all over the place. This massive one when it was massively overbought. Weekly divergences can take months to play out. But now we have potential bullish divergence with weekly RSI in oversold. Listen, this could go to 14,000 or 12,000 and still confirm that bullish divergence. So there's nothing to do here. We need to wait till RSI on a weekly close, and then the next week makes a definitive move up. But this is a major signal that things could be starting to bottom here. I know that sounds vague, but it is what it is. You have to wait for confirmation. But the most oversold weekly has ever been on RSI, making a much higher low on RSI and potentially a lower low on price. By the way, that was the last close, was up here. So if the week closes up higher, it won't even be here, right? Just saying, trying to look for some potential signals here right now. Things should be better. Ether Cardano leads steep crypto slide amid dollar strength. Yeah. Shit's getting uglier. When Bitcoin drops, we know that everything else drops even more, and Bitcoin dominance tends to rise. Bitcoin dominance did bounce there off support, as I kind of talked about, was likely. But yeah, I mean, at the lowest point it's basically been since 2018. But the dollar has been raging, right? Even with these ugly candles here, that was a hanging man. This was a gravestone doji, right? Still continuing up, showing just absolute massive strength. And when the dollar goes up, it punishes literally everything in its path. Listen, ETH, I kind of pointed this out to you guys a lot. People were getting really bullish, and I kept saying, you know, listen, the 50 MA right here, really hard to get bullish when it keeps getting rejected there. It looked like it was going to close above yesterday. Did not. Got super rejected. Now we're down below. That's kind of the make it or break it line right now. Although I still, as I've said multiple times, and Ched said and Burb said last week, 1284 is a untested previous resistance. It would be a massive support and a great entry if we do see it drop. They also mentioned ADA here. Listen, ADA looks like a descending triangle. Nothing against the project. I know people get triggered, but you're looking at something like this, right? Is usually how it goes. Does not mean it will happen. It's unconfirmed. I don't want to hear it. There's nothing to do with ADA. We're simply looking at a chart. It could be a chart of everything, my God, right? But you have a flat bottom. You have alternating touches down and up with a descending on top. That is a descending triangle. Did I say ascending? I mean descending triangle, right? Usually that breaks down. So we do not want to see ADA down below like this 40-cent area, or could be seeing a lot more downside there. What are stonks doing today? Kind of flat. Bitcoin kind of flat. Did make it all the way down to 18,526. Pretty astounding. Ye old bouncy ball droppeth through the flooreth and causing depressioneth. Scott is making sense, reading charts correctly, looking for indicators, not jumping to conclusions. Sounds CA. Listen, for me, technical analysis is just try to give me some ideas that'll be in confluence with the other things that I'm seeing. By no means am I telling you guys what is going to happen. I'm not even trying to make predictions. Just trying to show you some signals you can use in your own system. Yeah, because it can all change. Statistics is probability, not certainty. Absolutely true. Funny thing is, Roy's here saying Luna is going to 1 cent, and I literally don't even know if that's good or bad because fuck Luna. I haven't even looked at it in absolute ages. What else do we got here in the Z comments? Yeah, when in doubt, lower the bar and your expectations. I tell my wife that every day. It's good advice. Yeah. Hey, drop the ball on that like button. Show some love. Like it. Like the thing. Do the thing. Is ETH the new Bitcoin? I say absolutely not. Bitcoin is Bitcoin. ETH is ETH. And I don't know why they have to be compared to one another, because they have very little to do with each other, except for one more week, the consensus mechanism. Yeah. These Luna guys got crapped on by Do Kwon one time, and they're coming back for seconds. That's what people do, man. Humans are really bad at doing learning, understanding mistakes of the past, admitting when they're wrong, and moving on. Yeah. Anyways, guys, that is all I got for you. Right down there, it says, listen, I don't ever pitch the newsletter, but just in case you're watching and somehow don't know about it, I have a newsletter that I write at 4:30 in the morning, 5 days a week, and it's completely freaking free. Completely free, called The Wolf Den. You can get the link right down below in the description. Yeah. I'm on that mindset now about ETH. It's totally different, and it's more a controlled corporate coin developing their own tech. Right. I don't necessarily agree that it's more corporate, but I agree with the sentiment, and I've been saying it forever. Listen, Bitcoin maximalism is great. Those people have driven the price and the adoption and support for Bitcoin since the very beginning. But you look weak as shit when you view everything as competition and get triggered when anything else happens anywhere else in the market. Like, you know, the most powerful men in the world, like, it's like if they got triggered by every single comment from like a lesser competitor or something, like a billionaire and some guy who like has like a local business keeps poking at him and triggering him and he responds all the time. Bitcoin is strong enough that it doesn't need to be defended against other cryptocurrencies in my mind. That should be a point for maximalism, not a point against. But Ethereum's moving to proof of stake. It's programmable. The problem is that people just hate, Bitcoiners hate when Ethereum is called money, right? So just don't call it money, and hopefully we can, I don't know, not have an argument. Ego is our biggest enemy. That's for sure. Yeah. Anyways, guys, that is all I have for you on the day. I will be back tomorrow with another epic roundtable, but I'm going to keep you in suspense. You don't even know who it's going to be. See you then, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow. Peace.
That's dope.